Sharing with you in this video how to become more creative naturally without trying. And so I think a lot of people put in a lot of effort when it comes to being more creative, and oftentimes what you'll find is that the more effort that you try to put in to being creative, the opposite happens, the less creative you are. And so we're gonna investigate and talk about in this video how to avoid that so that naturally you start to create whatever it is that you actually want to create in your life. And then so the first thing that I want to share with you in this video in terms of how to actually do this is to have an understanding that ultimately speaking, all creativity comes from inner intelligence and your inner guidance. That's where all creativity comes from. So we have to drop our egos and understand that any creative endeavor that you're ever going to create in your life will come not just from your logical mind, but from the part of you that doesn't necessarily think as much. You just sort of do, but the doing doesn't require any sort of thinking or planning necessarily anymore, because all the planning is done. All the planning has already been, so the plan has already been set out. Everything has already been planned. Things are already done in that regard. And then so all that's really left to do is just to execute. But oftentimes we get blocked from doing this in a very natural way because we're too focused on the logical plan and like the right thing to do and what's the right path. And here's a good insight to realize is that there is no right path. The more that you take action, the more that you execute, the more that you radically act towards what you feel is the right thing to do moment to moment, you will learn exactly what you have to learn, and all the right ideas will come to you at the right times. And if there's something that you want, that idea that is required of you to get to that next level and be that person that you want to be will come to you at the right time. And it's not going to be through forcing it. This is why, like, when you're showering or when you're sort of relaxing, maybe before you go to sleep, you'll find that you get the best ideas. The best ideas come to you maybe like right before you're about to sleep, and it's like, oh, there's the idea, let me just write it down quick. Why does it come to you in that moment? Why is it that when you're trying really hard that you can't get the idea, but then when you kind of relax a little bit into it, you just find the solution? Because it's about remembering that you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that actually caused the problem. You have to separate yourself from the problem. You have to separate yourself from the issue and understand that all solution-oriented thinking, all creativity, all the solution to your problems, or maybe if it's not even a solution to a problem, it's just something that you want to create just for, you know, its own sake and for your own enjoyment. Understand that all of that will come to you not through force, but through connecting to that divine intelligence within you. And then so understand that the second thing that I want to share with you in this video as well is that creativity comes really with little resistance. That's when creativity is truly going to start to come into your life, is when you have as little resistance as possible. So when you have resistance that comes from the baggage of being attached to your ego, that's when your creativity and your life force gets lessened. Oftentimes what I believe people do not realize is that when we have an attachment to our ego, not to say have an ego, because there's nothing wrong with having an ego, but when there's an attachment to it, there's nothing wrong with having an identity. But if you believe that at the most existential level, that is all you are, is just your form identity, your ego identity, who you believe you are at a form level, that's not going to be a sufficient enough level of awareness for you to see that you can have more ideas than you believe is possible at this current timing. So I think that oftentimes, again, what we don't see is that when we're attached to our ego, we can't think of the solution. We usually get very attached to our problems, attached to the negativity. We can't kind of like separate ourselves from the problem because like we are the problem and we don't see it. Oftentimes, do you ever notice that a victim never wants to admit that they're a victim and that maybe they're causing the problems in their life to a certain degree? Nobody ever wants to admit it. It's easier and more comfortable to point fingers out there, to judge, to criticize. But then what we don't realize is that all of this comes as a result of attachment to our ego. And that's what I mean by resistance. I'm not saying that resistance and negative emotions are not going to be a part of life. But ultimately what I'm saying is that when I'm saying resistance, what I mean is the resistance that comes from, again, attachment. Attachment that is completely avoidable if we can have a commitment to a higher level of awareness while we do what we do. So it's not even anymore about the actions that we're even taking in our life, because one person can take the same action as you, but maybe they have more power behind the action that they take. And I want to share with you in this video why. Like, why is it that one person can follow the same plan, the same structure, the same business idea as another person, but then yet one person has powerful influence and then gets results, gets people to listen to them, to trust them, and to understand what they're saying. And then the other person has trouble getting the results that they're looking for, that they want from people, to get the trust that they're looking for from people, to see the value that they're offering, because really they don't even believe themselves in the value that they're offering. So how is it that we're going to be expecting other people to actually see the value that we're bringing if we can't even see the value that we're bringing to ourselves? That's a big problem. And again, what we're trying to do here is to remove the unnecessary resistance that we add to the present moment from the own mental story that we add about the situation that is not serving us. It's okay to have a mental story about a situation, but if it's a story that you're choosing that doesn't actually serve you, maybe it's time to choose a different one. And then so the final thing that I want to share with you in this video, in terms of how to become more creative naturally without actually trying, is to understand that what you really want to do is also trust in something greater than your ego, which is to trust in God. It's to trust in God, it's to trust in the divine intelligence, it's to trust in the universe. And it really connects back, of course, to trusting in your inner intelligence. But also I want you to understand that trusting in your inner intelligence and then sort of trusting in the bigger picture of what you could call God or the universe or source or the divine, or whatever the case, whatever word you want to use, understand that all of this is being pointed to the same place, which is the formless aspect of who you are, which is always true regardless of what is happening or has ever happened in your life, regardless of your past, regardless of your future, regardless of you thinking thoughts in your past about your past right now, and regardless of you thinking thoughts about your future right now in this present moment. What's true and what's always been true since the very first moment that you've ever been aware, like if you think back to the first moment that you were ever aware, there was something that became sort of true in that moment, which is this sense that you exist. It's just this, you could call it a feeling, but it's not quite a feeling. It's even prior to feeling. It's just this, again, sense, for lack of a better word, that you exist. And so this sense that you exist is prior to any thought, any emotion. And so this formless dimension of who you are, I believe, is moving through you in every single part of your life at the form level as well. And you can see the intelligence of this in everything that is happening. Look at life. Life in of itself is an extremely intelligent thing that is just happening. Like you know what to do naturally. Think about this. It's not even, or possibly better yet, don't think about this. Realize it if you can. Realize it, have an insight, not about really thinking about it, but just kind of seeing it. See that when you're taking action and you're doing productive things in your life, I want you to notice the highest levels of productivity that you are doing in your life. Usually, it's not even something that you need to read in a book. Maybe a book sort of gives you that spark that you need. It's not even necessarily even need to see it in a person do it, or hear it from a person, or learn what to do. It's almost like you just know. There's this knowing. And what is knowing? Knowing is such an interesting word, because it's like you know, but it also comes from not knowing simultaneously, and that's the paradox of it all. I'm not playing with words here. I'm really being honest, because it's like when you can surrender to not knowing and not knowing the answers, and like you don't, and accept that you don't know everything, and you can surrender yourself to God, let go of your ego, surrender to the divine, what you'll find is that from that space, you know what to do at a form level. You just sort of know what to do naturally without necessarily thinking about it or forcing your way through it. Because once you have an intention, once you know where you're going, you know the path that you're set on, you will notice those opportunities. And then again, that intelligence within you will guide you to take action in the right direction. And then at that moment, what this does is this puts you in an extremely empowered position to stop looking externally for validation, and if you're on the right track. That's a very, very powerful place to be, because many people, what they're doing, including myself in the past, and again, I can fall into this, many people can fall into sort of cycles of doing this. But when we do this, what can happen is that when we're attached more to our egos, we are attached to looking for more feelings of validation from stuff happening out there in the external world, rather than how you see it, rather than the actions that you're taking and then things happening from your perspective. It's like you're dependent on things happening out there to feel a certain state. But then when we can pull our energy back towards ourselves, we realize that to generate our own state from within is possible, and it comes from seeing that external phenomena don't always have to have so much power and influence over the way that you feel, by again trusting in that inner knowing as you're doing whatever it is that you're doing in your life.